Alright, so if you're out there and you're just tuning in, getting ready to get this going, can somebody just put a comment up that they can actually hear me? Because trying to multitask getting all this stuff done, this is a whole new world. This will be great viewing before my flight home. So yeah, if anybody can just maybe leave a comment. I think that volume's just a little bit too high. If anyone can leave a comment just to let us know how things are, if you can hear me. Brilliant. Thank you, Brian. Thanks, Fran. Thanks, Wendy. That's brilliant. Okay. So is it too loud or is it all right? Anybody let me know. Okay, cool. Right, I think I'm pretty much ready to start. This is all clever stuff. This, I'm really liking this. All right, so let's just flip over. I'm going to actually attempt to put a webcam on now, so nobody get too scared. Let's have a quick look. Let's just dive over to where are we? Right, let's go to here. Right, can you see me? Alright, so we're going to go through a few things. There's a couple of things I want to show you first of all and just mention to you, those of you who are maybe new to what I do. A couple of things I want to just show you, and then we're going to dive on. I've no idea how long this is going to be. I'm guessing maybe 20 minutes or so, something like that. There's a comment section. You may have seen that. Some of you are already using that. I will try, bear in mind I'm a man, I'm trying to multitask here. I'll try to answer questions as we go through it. But those comments will be, or those questions rather, in the live chat will be on the comment section of the YouTube video once it's uploaded as well. So if I don't answer you during this, I will answer you after it's all finished. All right, so just get that clear. Now let me just show you one little thing over here. So I'm going to disappear now, and I want to just show you just a couple of things. So let's just go over to here. This is clever stuff. Right, and first of all then, just coming over to the desktop, I want to show you just a couple of things. First of all, if you're not already subscribing to my, I don't say newsletter, my email group, if you go to my website, which is just glynnjewis.com, at the top here, email group, and when you're in there, there's all kinds of stuff. If you're lucky, you get one email a week. I try to let you know about new videos, anything that's new and upcoming, any deals that are going on, all that kind of stuff. But also there's tip sheets, which we're going to get back to doing, and also you get the ability to download any of the the files that you can use so you can follow along with some of the videos. The other thing which I am pretty much excited about is this one here. This is the new book. Finally it's been released, although it says here, this is the Amazon UK, it says here it'll be dispatched within about a month, which is nice. But I think actually today, or rather yesterday, it was actually released in the United States. It's always a month later with the American side of things. So yeah, when it's, because they've got to get the stuff from America to here. So they generally say when it's released in America, it's a month later that it gets released in the UK. But just one little kind of request, I guess. Really, let's just dive back to me on here. One little request: if you have got it, if that's in the if you've managed to get it either in the Kindle format or in the paperback version, this one just here. If you've been to any of the shows that have been up recently, not at the Professional Imaging show, I'm afraid, they didn't have it there, but they certainly had it at the photography show, and they've just had it when I was just recently out at the Photoshop World in Orlando. Just come back. Loads of jet lag, which is why I've decided to do this today. Some of you have already made some reviews, and I really do thank you for that. There's some great ones. So all I'll say is if you have got the book in Kindle or paperback, do us a favour and just go and write a comment on Amazon. Just a couple of lines would be great, but only if you like it. All right. Anyway, right. Let's just let's dive over now to what we're going to be doing this evening. And this is just a little bit of retouching on this particular image here. Now you don't want to see me when I'm doing this, so let's just disappear out of the way. There we go. All right, so cracking on. Let's have a look. There's a few people in there. That's great attendance. Thanks a lot, folks. So this is the actual final image. Let's just go to full screen so you can see the actual image here. This is one that was taken during my pre-con or in-depth class at Photoshop World. Real simple lighting on this one. It's just a one light, my favourite, which is the 135 octa coming in from camera left. And you can kind of tell that by the way the light pattern is. We've got light on one side of the face, this is Dustin, and here we've got Danya. And on the other side of the face, we've got shadow with this triangular pattern of light underneath their eyes. So it's a pattern that a lot of you who've been following what I do will have seen me doing this now. It's a much preferred lighting pattern that I really do like to do. And I guess we're going to kind of call this cross lighting or like a Rembrandt lighting style. But just to give you an idea of the out of camera photo, that's this one here. So there are a few things we're going to go through. There's maybe 8 or 9 steps, something like that. Some of it you'll maybe have seen on some other videos, and some things you won't have seen. Now we are going to go through this quite quickly, so I probably will end up doing some extra little videos to cover those later on. But before we actually get into the retouching, just to let you know, I have done the colour correction here. I have done the white balance, and I've actually made sure that the colours are correct, and I can show you that by these two images here. These are pictures that I took before we started the photo shoot. This is Dustin holding the grey card. It's an X-Rite colour checker passport. And here we've got the actual the colour swatches with them in there as well. Now I'm going to do a video to show how you can actually use that photo there and a plugin within Lightroom to make sure that your colours are absolutely perfect. So if you were looking at this image once it's all been done using the plugin, if you're looking at it on a calibrated screen, the colours you see on screen are what you'll have seen when you're doing the photo shoot. So you must make sure that you have a monitor calibrated when you do this kind of thing as well. It's a real simple process. It literally just 1 or 2 clicks and everything is bang on. Now obviously at some point during this retouching we're going to be colorizing our image, but I'm a big believer in having the best possible starting point, especially if you're going to be doing a number of pictures in this particular series and you want them all to have that kind of uniformity across all the images. If they all start off the same, they're all going to end up looking the same so long as you follow those same patterns. So I hope that makes sense. Alright, okay, so let's have a look then. Let's just dive over to the out of camera picture, and I'll just show you a few little things that I do. I'm going to go to the develop module in Lightroom. There isn't that much I do in here. I'm not a huge user of Lightroom, although I do love it, and I've got a pretty pimped out machine. I do tend to find that it does labour just a little bit. So let's have a look here. All I'm going to do is just bring up the shadows just a little bit over on the right hand side now in the develop module. And so that's pretty much there. I'm going to come down to the detail tab, add a little bit of sharpening in here, not too much. I tend to find that around about 40 is enough, 38, 40, something like that. Then the masking slider, just hold down the Alt or Option key depending on if you're working on PC or Mac, drag it along, so where we see black is not being sharpened, the white areas are being sharpened. Obviously I just want the sharpening to be on Dustin and Danya, so something like that. We'll now go to lens corrections, and just by habit I tend to just put a little tick in here, remove chromatic, put my teeth in, chromatic aberration, and also enable profile correction. So that's going to now give me the best possible starting point. But it may be a surprise to some of you who are kind of heavy users of Lightroom, but that is generally all I'll do. You'll see when I zoom in, there are actually a few things that we could do in Lightroom here, and just maybe a few uses of the spot removal, but I prefer to use it, do that using Photoshop. There's also, if you noticed on Danya, just a very slightly out of focus, and I want to show you how you can correct that. That'll be especially handy for those of you who maybe enter competitions in your camera clubs when you've been told that your pictures aren't quite in focus. This may be something that could really help you. Alright, so there's not much that we've done in there. I'm just going to send this straight over now to Photoshop. So we can either do the keyboard shortcut or just go to the photo menu, edit in, and we're going to choose Adobe Photoshop CC. So let's just dive over into Photoshop and it'll bring the image in. Alright, so then let's have a quick look here. Right, so I just mentioned about the slightly out of focus part on Danya's face. When you compare her eyes to Dustin's eyes, it is slightly out of focus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Command or Control J to create a duplicate in the layers panel, and we'll just call this focus. There we go, so focus, something like that. Then I'm going to go to the filter menu, choose sharpen, and then shake reduction. This is one of those updates that was brought into Photoshop, and obviously the way Photoshop gets updated, it seems like every other day things can get introduced that we kind of forget about. So this is a really good addition here that I absolutely love. Now over on the right hand side we've got this preview. We can click and drag that around, but what I like to do is in the very bottom right hand corner there we've got this little target preview. If I click on that, then come into my picture, we can now see exactly where it is we want to work on. And if I press down and release, it's pretty much like when I use the reduce noise filter. We see the before and after. Now it's very rare I make any changes to the settings in this particular filter here, because I don't know if you're able to see it on your screen. You'll certainly see it when you look at the video afterwards maybe, but if I press down and release, you can really see that just with these default settings it's actually making a great bit of an adjustment there. It's actually making her whole face and everything start to look more and more in focus. So I'm just going to click OK on that. That's a great filter to use. Obviously it has its limitations. You know, you can't take a completely out of focus picture, but when you've got one that is just slightly out, it is incredibly handy. Now it's also done the actual sharpening or the shake reduction onto Dustin, and I don't really want that because he was pretty sharp. So I'm going to add a black layer mask to this to hide the effect, and then just paint it in onto Danya. So to do that, we've got the layer mask at the bottom of the layers panel here. I'm going to hold down my Alt or Option key, click on that to add a black layer mask, then just get a brush with a white foreground colour and 100% opacity, and we'll just come in and just paint that over Danya just there. So you can see now her eyes are nice and sharp, and so's Dustin's. So that's all I'm going to do just there. So let's just zoom out just a touch. Alright, so now let's just create a blank layer, and let's call this skin clean up. Typical Virgo, keeping everything nice and tidy. And there's lots of ways we could do this. Again, in Photoshop, that's what I love about it. There's never one way to do something. But I'm just going to remove some of the blemishes on Danya's face here. And I'm going to probably just use something like the spot healing brush. When I'm doing that, because I'm using a blank layer, that's not adding to my file size, so my computer's really happy. But in the options bar at the top of the screen, whenever we choose a tool, we have unique options available to us. And the one that we need to make sure we tick when we're using a blank layer is one here that says sample all layers at the top of the layer stack. Otherwise, we're going to try and get it to clean up nothing, because Photoshop is a bit stubborn. It has to be led everywhere and told exactly what to do. It's only going to see a blank layer. But by me putting a little tick in this sample all layers, it tells Photoshop to look down through the layers until it finds pixels. And those are the ones that it'll work on, but the work it'll do on this blank layer here. Now I'm going to go through it very quickly. We're just going to use the spot removal. Mine's set to content aware. We can change that, but I'm just going to come in here and just very quickly, just to show you, just to remove some of these blemishes just off Danya's face, just there, something like this. So I should have some music actually I could be playing while I'm doing this as well, couldn't I? But we'll go very, very quickly, because I just want to give you the idea as opposed to actually doing a complete retouch, because what we're doing here is pretty unrealistic. I don't race through retouching at all. I really like to take my time with a nice glass of vino on my side, something like that. Alright, so let's just have a look at that there. That's pretty good. I do like to use a spot removal tool. It's very, very good, very quick. And you've probably noticed that, you know, you've actually got that in Lightroom, but I do find the one in Photoshop is a heck of a lot quicker. Alright, so we'll go for that. A little bit of a mark on her top. Gets that there. There's nothing on Dustin that I really want to move, so that's pretty good. So let's just zoom out. In fact, let's just come to there. So you can see just very quickly, just removing some of that stuff just there. Just a little non-permanent blemishes is what we want to get rid of. Obviously, we don't want to get rid of any kind of moles or anything like that they might have. If you're going to do that kind of stuff, it's always worth speaking to the model first in case you remove something that they actually, you know, quite like. And by you removing it, you're kind of saying that you don't like it. So that's a bit of an awkward moment there when they ask you about it. Alright, okay, so now then on Dustin, what I want to do with him is reduce this kind of shine on his face, on his forehead just here. And again, there's lots of ways you could do this. There's like frequency separation is maybe one way you could decide to do it. But I'm just going to do it by adding a blank layer. And let's just put in here, we'll put reduce shine. Go for that just there. And I'm going to choose, this time I'm going to come over to the toolbar, and this time I'm going to use the healing brush. But I'll actually set it, if you look at the top here, we've got the options. By default, it'll be set to normal. I'm actually going to set it to darken. And I do this one quite a lot. So set it to darken. So now what I'm going to do, if I just zoom in just a little bit, we've got a little shiny area just here, but to the side of it, on the shadow side of his forehead, actually it's not quite in shadow here, but we can see it's not shining. So I can sample from that and try to cover over this shiny area. So by me using the darken blend mode, what that's going to do is when I now click, or hold down rather, the Alt or Option key, and then click on Dustin's forehead, it's now sampled this non-shiny part of his head. So now when I bring the cursor over and paint onto Dustin, it's only going to darken down those areas that are lighter than where I sampled, and that's by using that darken blend mode. So I hope that makes sense. Just a little bit here. Now at the moment this is all being done at 100%, and you can see that what the actual effect is here is not that realistic. But what I tend to do now is just take the opacity, bring it down to maybe even around about sort of 50-ish%. But you can see just by doing that, it does take out that harshness in that shine there. And that's purely because Dustin was been modelling for a while, getting very warm and getting a bit of sweat on his forehead, and the light was hitting it and it was getting quite hard. But maybe around about 50% would be good. That actually gets rid of that quite nicely. Now that lowered that opacity on that blend mode, I'll actually do a little bit on his nose as well. So we'll bring the size of the brush down using the left bracket key. Just sample a little bit on the side of the nose that isn't shiny, and we'll just paint over that shiny part of his nose just there. So now if I turn that layer on and off, there you go, you can see that it's reduced that. And I think there's a little bit on Danya's nose that I want to reduce. Just this little bit, this bright spot on the bottom part of the nose, just right just there. So Alt key again, just to sample a non-shiny bit. and we'll just paint over it just there. So you can see just by using that 50% or roughly 50% opacity on that layer here where we're removing the shine, it doesn't remove it completely, it just removes it enough. We don't want to get rid of it completely because then I think it starts to look unrealistic, but there you go, it kind of knocks out the harshness in there, which I'm quite liking that. Alright, so how are we doing here? Any questions at the minute? No. Wendy, you've gone. Oh, that's terrible. Alright, so there we go. Right, let's just move in now. So now I want to do the eyes. Now, both Dustin and Danya, they've got beautiful brown eyes. At the moment, they look a little bit too dark. So let's just see what we can do on that one there. So I'm just going to click on the background layer, and I'm going to go to brush. And this time I'm going to use quick mask. Now, there's lots of ways we can select the eyes. One preferred way for me is using quick mask, where we can actually paint in the area that we want to select. So what we're going to do is enter quick mask mode by pressing Q or clicking on the actual quick mask icon in the toolbar there. Let's just zoom in. So we don't want a brush that's completely soft. Let's just harden the brush up just a touch, and then we'll just paint over the eye. So now you see what happens is wherever this red overlay is where you're actually selecting. So go for like that. Now we don't want to obviously paint over his pupils, so we're now painting the opposite colour just to bring back the area where his pupils are, and then exit quick mask mode by pressing Q or clicking on the icon. So now we see what we'd expect to see when we're making selections, which is the marching ants, just like that. Now, just one little side note on this: when you're doing this, when you're using quick mask, Adobe have Photoshop set up in such a way that where you paint is where you don't want to select, and I find that a little bit confusing. So I set mine up a little bit differently. You'll only need to do this ever once, so all you need to do is come to the quick mask icon in the toolbar here, double click on it, double click to bring up the quick mask options. Now, if you've never done this before, yours will be ticked saying masked areas. If you make sure that it says selected areas, then click OK, wherever you paint is wherever you'll be selecting. So now let's just press Q, come out of quick mask mode, which is great. I'm now going to go to the top of the panel, the layers panel there, and I'm going to use a blend mode now to maybe brighten the eyes just a little bit, add a little bit of contrast to them. So I'm going to use selective color, which is on the bottom row here at the top right hand corner of the screen. We've got the adjustment level layers. I'm going to use on the bottom layer here, so the bottom row on the right hand side, selective color. Now when you choose this, it's going to be set to reds. So just change it to neutrals. And then the first thing we're going to do to brighten the eyes up, there's generally three things that we need to know a little bit about in Photoshop. And we don't need to know an advanced kind of depth about these things, but if we know of them, there's pretty much nothing we can't do with a lot of practice. And those three things are layer masks, brushes, and blend modes. I don't care whether you look at a picture that's got maybe 3 layers in it or 300 layers. I guarantee 100% when you look in there, the person who's made that picture will have used layer masks, brushes, and blend modes. Maybe a couple of other little things to some extent, but the majority will be those 3 things. So if you can have an idea of them, there is absolutely nothing you can't do. So we've now got an adjustment layer here, and we've changed it to neutrals, and so far let's use a blend mode to brighten the eyes, and I'm going to choose this one here, linear dodge, and in brackets it says add, but just linear dodge. And look how you can see it a little bit. Obviously Dustin's eyes are quite dark anyway, but you can see if I turn that on and off, it is going to brighten the eyes. Now the question is, how did I know that it was that blend mode I needed to use? Well, the simple answer there is I tried every other blend mode. You can't break this. Just go around, click and play and see what does what. So just have a click around and check to see what the other blend modes do. Now, so that's brightened the eyes just a little bit. We can, if we didn't have somebody with quite such dark eyes, we can now use these sliders here to actually change the colour of them. Let's just zoom in a touch so you can see this on Dustin's eyes. But you can see now, see how they're changing the colours just by playing around with these sliders. But let's just make his eyes just a nicer, deeper brown. So I can bring the sliders across to here, add a bit more yellow in, something like that. Maybe a bit more cyan, a bit more red in there as well. Now, we can play around with the colours there to actually improve the contrast or increase the contrast. We can still do that within this one adjustment layer by changing where it says colours, change it from neutrals to blacks. And then you can use the slider, the only slider at the bottom here, the black slider. If you go to the left, that reduces the contrast. If you go to the right, that increases the contrast. So we'll just increase it just a touch, something like that. So let's just turn that layer on and off now, see what it's done. Obviously, like I said, they're quite dark eyes anyway, That's pretty good. It's kind of enhanced it just a touch. In fact, let's just bring that little bit down. Actually, that's a good learning point there. Never kind of trust it by being up this close. Back out just a little bit, and then you can get a good idea of what those eyes are going to be looking like when in the final picture. It's quite deceiving when they're really, really close. So something like that would be good. I'm going to take the opacity down on there, maybe to around about 70-ish, something like that. Now I'm also going to add some sharpening. No, I'll do that actually. No, I'll do that afterwards. Let's first of all, let's just dive over to Dania's eyes, and we'll do the same thing. So I'm going to click on that background layer, get the brush, press Q to enter quick mask mode, and then whoops, and then make sure we're painting with the correct colour there. Get the red overlay to say where we're actually painting is where we're selecting, something like that. Painting the opposite colour now to paint over there to bring her pupils back. And then come out of quick mask mode so we get the marching ant selection. That's pretty cool. Alright, so let's go to the top. Now we're going to choose another selective colour adjustment layer, and we can do the same thing. So the first thing, blend mode, linear dodge to brighten the eyes just a little bit, and you can see that actually a bit more there on Dania's eyes. If I turn that before and after just there. And let's just go back to neutrals when we're in the actual selective colour properties, and we'll just make them just a little bit browner. That really kind of adds some impact to that brown in the eyes. Beautiful brown eyes just there. Contrast, I don't think we need to add any contrast into Dania's eyes, so I'll leave that as is. Let's just back out just a little bit, take the opacity down to maybe only a little bit, maybe 80%, will be fine. So that's their eyes that have been brightened, a little bit of colour in there. Let's now just do a tiny bit of sharpening on that. So this time I'm going to do a blank layer, and we'll call this Sharpen Eyes. Like so. Come over to the toolbar, and then I'm going to use the Sharpen tool. Now this was updated a while back now in Photoshop, and I think it's one that's not used that much, but I absolutely love it. It's absolutely brilliant. But always make sure when you're using it, in the options at the top of the screen here, sample all layers is ticked, because like before we're using a blank layer, so there's nothing in that. We need to tell Photoshop to look down through the layers to find some pixels. So I put a tick on that. But also there's one next to that called Protect Detail. Make sure you put a tick in that. In fact, anywhere in Photoshop that you see the word Protect or Advanced, put a tick in it. Get your money's worth. If you see those two words, Protect and Advanced, it can only help to improve what you're doing. So always put a little tick in there as well. Now when it comes to using the Sharpen tool, then at the top you see I've got my strength set to 30. That's pretty much where I leave it. But the way we use it is this. Get the Sharpen tool. Now I'm going to press down on Dustin's eye, and I'm going to circle round a few times. As I do that, I'm not actually releasing my pressure. So it's pressing down, I'm held down, and I'm circling down. So here we go. So I press down, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on that eye. Same on the other eye. Hold down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm hoping you'll see this on your screen, but if I turn that on and off now, you can just about see that I've done some sharpening. That's pretty cool on, or looks, you know, enough sharpening on the screen that I've got, but again I don't know how it's in sort of translating on yours just there. But the key point about this is, you'll notice that I said I pushed down, then I circled round maybe up to 5 times, something like that. Then I did exactly the same on the other eye. Now the way this actually works, actually just pop over just here for a second. Let's just dive back over to just here. So what I'm looking at here, the way the actual Sharpen tool works is this. Imagine if I had a can of spray paint, a can of red spray paint, and there was a wall right in front of me. Got the spray can, I've got the nozzle at the top, and I press it down, so now paint's coming out. And I go across to the right, and I keep it held down, then I go across to the left, and I keep doing that. Now obviously as I do that without releasing it, there's more and more and more paint building up and building up. That's exactly how the Sharpen tool works. So just be careful that whatever you do in one eye, you also do in the other eye. But that little Protect Detail checkbox, that's going to give you a little bit of leeway, because you can actually sharpen quite a lot, go round and round and round a few more times before you start to see it all breaking down. That's the advantage of having that little tick in that box. Alright, so let's just go back. Alright, so now that I've sharpened Dustin's eyes, let's just now go over to here, and I'll do the same on Dania as well. So press down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there we go. So turn that off and on. There we go. That's cool, like that. Right, now let's just double click on the hand tool. Oops, you can still see me there, can't you? Hold on, I didn't want to see the top of my head, do you? Let's go to there. How's that? All right, cool. Could you actually see me then? I don't know. Could you actually see me talking? I don't know. Right, okay, anyway. Let's just double click on the hand tool. So we can go back to full view. There we go, something like that. And the next thing we're going to do is dodging and burning. Now, I'm not going to spend ages going through this because this is one of those things that you can really get lost in. But the way we're going to do it is this. I'm going to go to the layer menu and we'll choose new fill layer. Oh no, we'll go layer, new. Whoops, layer, new. Getting used to this window sheet. It always comes over to the left hand side. Layer, new, and layer. Now in the properties here, we'll call this dodge and burn. And then the blend mode here, where it says mode, I'm going to choose soft light. And the reason I'm doing that is think of soft skin. So the blend mode we're going to use is soft light. And when we do that, little checkbox at the bottom here is now available to us where it says fill with soft light neutral color. Basically what we do is put a little tick in there and click OK. Over in the layers panel now, you'll see that at the very top of the actual layers stack, you've got a grey layer, but you can't see the grey. That's because of the blend mode. If it was just set to normal, it would look like this. So we've filled that blank layer with grey. We need pixels that we can darken and brighten using the dodging and burning. But if we leave it like this, obviously we can't see Dustin and Danya. So to keep the pixels but hide the grey, we use the soft light blend mode. Just remember soft for soft skin. Alright, so let's just zoom in on just a small amount on Dustin. I'm going to press O on my keyboard to choose the dodge tool over here on the left hand side. Now at the top here we've got the options again. For every tool you get the unique options. I'm going to leave the range set to midtones. Doesn't really make a difference because I'm using a 50% grey anyway. The exposure, never any more than 10%. In fact, when I'm doing pictures, generally I'm around about the 5 to 7%. I'll keep it at 10 so it looks a bit more obvious on your screen. But here you go, protect tones. Where that word protect is, you can see a little tick. So make sure that's ticked as well. So let's just do a little bit on Dustin. There's his nose, so just increase it. Now I'm going to a couple of strokes on his nose to add a highlight. Now the trick of this, or the idea behind this, is wherever I add a highlight, either side of that I'm going to add a bit of burning. So that's going to increase the depth, dimension and contour in the face. So highlight going down the middle of his nose. Now instead of me coming over to the toolbar and having to choose the burn tool, what I can do now is hold down the Option or Alt key on your keyboard, and that's now going to flip me over to the opposite tool. So now as I hold it down, I'm using the burn tool. But the great thing is, the actual settings at the top of the screen are the same that will be used with the burn tool as well. So it's nice and simple. So now put a couple of strokes either side of that highlight. Now I'm still holding down the Alt key, and I'm just going to go around darkening down his eyebrows, and we'll just darken down his beard just a little bit more as well. And you can see now it's very, well actually you can't see, it's very difficult to really notice what you're doing as you're doing this because it kind of creeps up on you, this dodging and burning. But now let's just do a little dodging just to increase that triangular pattern of light on his face just there. Darken down the shadow area. Let's just zoom in just a little bit and we'll just dodge underneath the eyes just to lighten those shadow areas under his eyes just a touch. And I might just do a little bit of burning around the outside of the eye just to really make them stand out, and on the eyelashes as well, something like that. So going very quick just to give you an idea. So let's just zoom out. In fact, let's just darken down in his mouth. Any questions? How are we getting on? Most of the setups are in text on the website. Who's that for? I'm trying to read comments and working. No, I think I'll just stick to working. Right, let's just zoom out. So now turn that on and off. You can see a little bit of stuff coming up there on Dustin. I'll do a tiny bit more on Danya, just so you can see the actual effect. And then we're going to move on. I want to show you something really cool with some textures that I got when I was walking around in Orlando over the last couple of days. So a bit of a highlight going down Danya's nose. Hold down the Alt key. Just add a bit of a darkening either side of that highlight. Now a little bit of burning on the the eyebrows. Maybe just increase the actual light on the side of the face here that's in shadow by using the dodge tool. I'm just going to darken down her hairline just a little bit. Really kind of shape the face in just a touch just there as well. Zoom in. One thing I like to do as well, where we get this part of the nose just here, I always like to make a really small, make the actual burn tool really small, and then just kind of follow that shape of that nose just there, just very subtle, because it just kind of make the actual shape of the nose and the depth and dimension of that kind of stand out just a little bit more. The idea here is to make the picture not look too flat and two-dimensional. I want to give it a little bit more kind of oomph by coming out of the page just a little bit. Alright, so let's have a look at that. Let's just turn that on and off. That's probably enough. I mean, you get the idea there. I don't want to take too much of the time on that one. So there we go, and we'll just go before, after, after. All right, so now let's have a look at this fake canvas. Now this is one that I absolutely love doing. You could go out if you wanted to go and buy one of these textured canvas backgrounds for companies like Oliphant, and they are absolutely fantastic. The only problem with those is, while I'm talking, let's just dive over to you just for a second. Excuse me. The only problem with having these canvas backgrounds is, if like me, you don't have a permanent studio, you're going to have to keep kind of putting that canvas up and then taking it down again. And they're not thick, they're not thin. These things are really quite thick. So every time you go to take them out and put them up, you're going to have to get all these creases out. So that's kind of like ironing the road, really, really hard. So what I tend to do is I just use grey paper. Don't worry too much about how bright or how dark, whatever that grey paper is, because you can control how much light falls on that paper, which will then control how bright or how dark it is. Just go for something kind of midway. I think, because I get mine from a company called Warehouse Express in the UK, and they call it charcoal. I think it's called charcoal grey, something like that, and that just works perfect. But let me just show you now how you can save, because those Oliphant backgrounds and other companies that make these textured canvases, they're not cheap by a long shot. So I want to show you how you can actually save quite a lot of money by adding your own textured background in. So let's just disappear off the screen for a second. So now let me just show you this. I've got, this is my, over on the right hand side we've got the layers panel. I've got my iCloud libraries. Now if I've got a few little ones that I've set up of my own here, I've got one called texture, and I'll just drag this out just a little bit. Now you see all these textures here. Every single one of these textures in here are ones that I photographed with my iPhone. Now all of them, apart from this bottom one just on the left hand side here, was photographed in Orlando, literally from walking from the hotel to the convention centre. I was walking with my friend Ed Faith, who was helping me out with the classes I was doing, and I literally just photographing them. There's concrete floor, there was some wall patterns, there was some painting, there was some wood panelling, just getting in close and photographing them. These things don't cost you a penny, and you can use them in all kinds of different ways. One of them in particular is how we can create this really interesting background. Let me show you what I mean by that. So let me just choose one of these backgrounds. First of all, I think I'll go for, let's have a look at this one here. Now you could, if you don't have them in your libraries, you could just have them now on the desktop or in a folder somewhere on your computer. So to get them into the picture, all you need to do is just go to File and Place, or Place Embedded, depending on what version of Photoshop you're using. You could, if you wanted to, just go File and Open, so it would open them in a separate tab, and then you can just drag them over into your picture. However you do it is completely down to you. But I like to store mine in my libraries, because it means no matter where I am and no matter what computer I'm using and when logged into, I've got access to all my assets, loads of different things. So let's just drag over one of these files, and we'll take this one here. So I'm going to click on it and drag it over and put it into my picture. Now it's at the very, very top of the layer stack. Now because I'm using this as a background, we don't need to worry about it being absolutely perfect and you can't stretch it out. You can stretch it out, and this is the great thing about using these textures by taking pictures with your phone. They don't have to be absolutely razor sharp and perfect, because you're going to do things to them anyway to help them blend into the background. So now that I've put that over the picture there, we'll press enter. Now there's a little bit of colour in this, so I need to desaturate it. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and you'll notice here where I cannot actually use desaturate. That's because I've dragged this over from the my cloud libraries, and you've got the little icon in the bottom right hand corner. Now you would also find that if you'd placed the texture into your picture, that desaturate would also be grayed out, so you can't actually use it that particular way. So a couple of things you can do here. You can either right click on the layer itself and choose rasterize layer, basically turn it into a normal layer, or you can go layer and then you'll find rasterize layer. Or a way that I do it is, if I just delete that for a moment, if we go back to my cloud libraries, when I drag the actual texture over, I hold down my Alt or my Option key, depending if I'm working on my Mac or my PC. And when I drag it over and place it into my image here, let's just resize it by Command or Control T for free transform. Let's just drag this nice and big, like that. We'll drag down that bottom bit just there, and drag that over there and press enter or return. Notice now, however, in the layers panel, it hasn't got that icon in the bottom right hand corner. In fact, when I go to the Image, Adjustments, desaturate, it's now available to us. So let's just click on desaturate, because when you do this technique, you don't want to be adding any kind of texture that's got colour into it, because it looks pretty naff when you do that. It doesn't look good at all. Now let's just add this texture now onto our background and start building up a really bespoke, unique kind of background, faking the look of our own expensive textured canvas. The only way we're going to do this is by using a blend mode. Remember those 3 things I said before? Layer masks, brushes, blend modes? Well, let's dive over here to the layers panel. At the moment it's set to normal. Let's maybe try, I don't know, let's try soft light. Something like that. So we go before, and after. So that's kind of added it in. It's all over Dustin and Danya at the moment, but don't worry about that. We don't need to concern ourselves with that. But I will lower the opacity. So let's just go to this layer here, lower the opacity down. I'm going to take it down to maybe around about 50%, something like that. Now I want to go back to my layers, my library here, and I want to start adding in just maybe a few more. A completely unique background by adding up and building textures on top of it. We don't need to stick at just using one texture. So now then, I'm going to drag, let's drag this one here. So hold down now my Alt key, dragging it over, placing it into the image, go edit and free transform to get the transform handles. I'm going to hold down my shift and Alt or shift and option to grow it as all in proportion like that, so it makes it easier to spread it out over the top. Drag the bottom down like so. Obviously I said now if we've got colour in it, we need to get rid of the colour, so we go to the image menu, adjustments and desaturate. We'll choose a blend mode of maybe soft light or overlay, it depends what you want to use. And I might actually blur that because those kind of strokes on that pattern there are very, very sharp. So let's go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and yeah, about 8 pixels, 8, 9 should be enough. Click OK, and I'm going to lower the opacity down to maybe something like, let's try 40. Yeah, that's pretty good. Let's have a look. Let's put these both into a group. So I'm going to hold down my shift key, click on the one below, go to the flyout menu in the top right hand corner of the layers panel and choose new group from layers, and we'll call this fake canvas. Okay, so it's before, after, something like that. Alright, now obviously like I said, you carry on putting more textures in using different blend modes like overlay, soft light, hard light. Just experiment with it, just see what kind of works for you as you build up your own kind of backgrounds. But one thing we need to do now is actually take it off. We need to remove this effect of Dustin and Danya because you can see it on them just there. So right, we've got blend modes in here adding the canvas. Let's now add one of those other 3 things I mentioned, the layer mask. Now we're going to get a brush. There's all 3 things that I've talked about: brushes, layer masks and blend modes. So I've got a brush, I've got a layer mask, I've got a black brush there. Let's just bring the size of the brush up by using the right bracket key. Let's just zoom in a little bit. Now the opacity at the top of the screen here in the options bar, the opacity of my brush is at 100%. So now we'll start to paint it off. And what you'll tend to find is when you do this particular technique, that anywhere that's lighter than the actual texture, well, that's where the texture is going to show onto it. So you can see here the face, we're getting onto there. So I need to remove it off all the skin, but also on Dustin's top here as well. It's really kind of obvious that the texture's landed on there. So we'll just come very quickly, paint it off like so. This is when using these Wacom style of tablets, you know, the actual pens, tablet things, makes life a heck of a lot easier when you're having to work quickly like this to paint it off. Now what I really love about this particular blend mode technique for putting in backgrounds is look at all Danya's hair, all the fine hairs and stuff like that, but absolutely no problem at all putting the background in there. It actually looks like she's just been, it actually really has been placed behind. All those fine hairs are still there, so that's great. Let's bring that down. Let's carry on with this black brush, just paint it off Dustin's trousers. I might leave it on the actual wooden stool like so. Let's paint it off Danya's skin and off her legs just a touch as well. What's this? Anthony Crothers. Oh, what quick question there from Anthony. I've just looked across. Would you normally blur the dodge and burn layer? I wouldn't, mate. But I know what you mean. I know what you mean there. You can blur the dodge and burn layer when you do it on a 50% grey. Let's just dive back actually while we're there. So let's have a look at the dodge and burn layer. Whoops. If I go to there. Now here, if I wanted to, let's say, I think this is what you mean, Anthony, but if I wanted certain areas to blend in better, because that's the hard thing about dodging and burning, is getting everything to blend in to look natural. The great thing about using 50% grey is that we can actually do that afterwards. So we can do our dodging and burning, and let's say I wanted, I don't know, this kind of work here that I did on Danya here to blend in a lot better. I can just get my lasso tool and just make a very loose lasso around the area that I want to work on. So now by me doing that, I'm telling Photoshop to ignore everything else except what's in this particular part here. So then to help my dodging and burning look much more realistic, I can then just come in, go filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I can just dial in a real small amount of pixel radius here to help it to blur in and kind of blend into each other. So you can see it's a much more flexible way of working when we do our 50% grey layer there for doing our dodging and burning. So I think that's what you meant, mate. I hope it is anyway. Alright, so let's just go back to here. Now, so I'm painting this all off, dusting and Danya, using the layer mask, and it can be quite challenging sometimes to see exactly where it is that you've removed it. You know, there's certain areas that you've probably missed. The way of checking that is this: if you just press the / key on your keyboard, you're going to get this come up. And what this is saying is that wherever you see the red is where you've painted it away. So I can just now easily come in and see where I missed. So I carry on painting with my black brush, because black conceals, white reveals, and we can come in and start to continue to paint it all off there. We don't need to go off everywhere because, like I said, generally the texture only shows through on the dark parts. But that's just a very quick way of seeing where you've painted on your layer mask. And when you're done and dusted with that, just press the / key again to go back to the normal view. Now with that background, I might actually take it down just a tiny bit more as well. So let's maybe take the whole thing down to maybe 70%. Just needs to be nice and subtle, something like that. That's pretty cool. Alright, okay, so how are we doing? Oh, perfect. Nice one. Cheers, Anthony. Great. Alright, so now, what I want to do now then is show you how I colorise the picture. You may have remembered when I first showed you the picture at this very start of this live stream. It's definitely got a certain kind of look to it. Now I'm going to use lookup tables. Anybody who's been following me for a while, certainly on this YouTube channel, will know that I'm a huge fan of using lookup tables, and we're going to do that now. So I want to give you a little bit of a formula that I used on this picture here of Dustin and Danya. Also, I want to show, well, I actually won't do that now. I'm going to also record a video after this live stream to show you something new that I found out within the lookup tables. And it's a new way that you can save absolutely unique recipes and make them a one click. I used to do it one way, it was a bit long-winded. I've now got a new way of doing it, which I found out just by playing around and experimenting when I was in America just a couple of days ago. So I'm going to record a video so you've got that. So make sure that you check in at some point to look at that video. I'm going to try and record it tonight. In fact, I probably will, because the jet lag's well and truly performing. Alright, now let's just show you then how we can use these lookup tables. I used to use Color Effects Pro 4 from the Nick collection, which Google have still got online. So if you haven't got it, it's completely free. Just get hold of it before maybe pull it and it's no longer on the web. But now I use these lookup tables. So the lookup tables, they're adjustment layers. They're found in the top right hand corner of your screen on the second row on the far right. And it's like a 3x3 grid. So I'm going to click to first of all add these lookup tables. Now if you've never seen these before, when you click on it you get this the properties come up, and there's 3 menus. Now each of these menus, the first one here says load 3D LUT or lookup table, and you'll see that in here there's loads of different choices that we can choose from. Some of these have been brought over from the movie industry, because this is where lookup tables came from for kind of giving movies their particular look, but they've also got some looks now and colours that are coming from the actual photography world. So we've got one there. Now there's 2 other menus, and to be honest with you, I never ever use these. Just the fact that it says abstract on the other menu here on the second one down is enough for me not to use it. My work is not abstract. But if you are somebody that does work that's a little bit out there, you may find that some of the actual lookup tables, you can actually load them in here. You might find that some of them actually do, you know, quite give the looks that you want. Actually I haven't loaded those in, but you may find when you click on these there's a few other options available to you. However, I only ever use the top menu. Alright, now let's just show you quickly how I can use these. I'm going to click on one right at the bottom first of all, one of my favourite ones called Tension Green. And when you click on this, if this is the first time you've used lookup tables, you might be thinking, that looks awful, what the hell would I want to use that for? But just remember this, they're adjustment layers. And what do you get with adjustment layers? Well, you get opacity, and you can also use blend modes. So start to experiment with them. Like I said before, just click on this and take settings to 100, take them to 50, take them to 0. What kind of looks can you create just by playing? But all I'm going to do with this particular layer here at the minute tension green, is take the opacity of this layer down to maybe 30%. Now I'm going to make a recipe of a certain kind of look here. I'm going to then go and choose another lookup table. So click on it. It adds another lookup table adjustment layer. And this time I'm going to go into the top menu, as I always do, and go to Edgy Amber. Click on that and you can see that's really, really strong. But just like before, we don't need to stick with it at that kind of strength. Let's just bring it down. And this one I'm going to probably take down to around about 35. Just experiment. So I want to try and create that kind of look with the colour that really fits the mood of the people in the scene that they're in. Right, the next one I'm going to use, let's add another one here. So click to add another colour lookup table adjustment layer. Go to the top menu, come down. There's one here called Crisp Winter. Let's just click on that one. I really actually like that just straight away. But I'm going to reduce that down to maybe something like, I don't know, maybe 20%, something like that. And then the last thing I'll do is just press D on my keyboard to make sure that my foreground and background colour are set to their default colours of black and white. And I'm now going to desaturate the image by adding a black and white gradient map. So I'm going to click on the gradient map straight out the bag. This is actually one of my favourite ways of doing black and white. So I really do find gradient maps are brilliant. But I'm going to make the lower the opacity of that now to around, let's have a look, maybe 30%. Now, being nice and tidy, the typical Virgo, let's keep things organised. The top layer is actually selected here. I'm going to hold down my Shift key, click on the very first lookup table now so they're all highlighted. Go to the flyout menu at the top right hand corner of the layers panel, choose new group from layers and we'll call this LUT for lookup table and click OK. Now you can see just very, very quickly using something that's built into Photoshop. It's only for those of you who are on the cloud, by the way, so I'm sorry about that. That's actually why you might want to go and get that Color Effects Pro 4 plugin if you haven't got the cloud. But for me, just having these lookup tables is enough to go onto the cloud. I absolutely love this. So now you can see if I turn that off and on, off and on, you get a really nice look on those the colouring that's actually created there. Now, I did say I'm going to record a video for you. I'll make sure I do that, but there's just one little thing I want to do before we're almost getting towards the end of this. I want to show you a couple of little things when we do these lookup tables that you might want to think about. Now, depending on what picture it is that you're working on, you may find that when you add colour using these kind of lookup tables or any other way that you add colour, you like it on the scene, but you don't really like the kind of effect it's having on the skin. So you might want to paint it away. So here's how you might want to do that. You're going to add a layer mask. You're going to get a brush. And like before, we're going to use a black brush because black conceals. So let's just say, for argument's sake, we want to reduce the effect of the colour on the skin here by, I don't know, maybe 30%. Reduce it by 30%. So I'll then take my brush and I'll paint with the brush at 70% opacity. So it's going to take off 70%. In fact, no, hold on a second. I want to take it to 30%. So I'm going to reduce the whole effect here by 30%. So now I come in and I start to paint over Dustin's face. Like this. You can probably hear me tapping away as I kind of move the brush around, paint on his skin. Let's remove it off Danya like this, like so. Let me say turn it off. Oops, turn it off and on. Let's just go to, there we go, turn the effect off and on. So you might think, because I've used the brush now at 30% opacity, I've actually removed it off their skin by 30%. However, let's just take a quick look at the layer mask. I'm going to hold down my Alt or Option key and click on the layer mask. This is what I've done. Because I kind of different areas that I'm painting on, I paint on one bit, lift up, paint on another bit, and so on and so forth. If I'm painting at 30% opacity, every time I accidentally go over the same area, it builds up the density of that black. So I'm not actually removing it off the skin at 30%. I'm probably removing it in sort of 30% in one place, 60% in another, maybe 90% in another place. So it's not a very good way of doing it. So here's what I do. Let's just go back to here. I'm going to fill that layer mask there with with white to get rid of what I've just done there. So we'll go fill it with white, click OK. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use a brush, a black brush, and I'm going to make sure this time that the brush is at 100% opacity. Then I'm going to come in and I'm going to remove the colouring that we've just added off Dustin and Danya completely. So let's just go here off his skin, onto his arm just there. And a little bit on this arm just here, on his hand, like so, and we'll move it off Danya's face like that, the top part of her chest just there, So just hold the space bar, click and drag down and paint it off her hand like that. I won't bother with the legs there because they're going into shadow anyway. Now, here's the thing. If I now hold down my Alt or Option key and click on the layer mask, we can see now that it's completely black, which actually means I've removed the colour completely off them. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to double click on the layer mask, and that's going to bring up the properties. And one of the sliders we have here is called density. Now I can actually control the density, or how dark that black is, by this controller here, moving the density slider backwards and forwards. So let's just say then we only want to have the effect on the skin at 30%. Well, let's take the slider here down to maybe around about 30%. Now let's take a look at the layer mask. Hold down the Alt or Option key, click on the layer mask, and look at that. That black is now no longer black. It's now 30% of what it originally was, which is exactly how much I wanted to have the effect on Dustin and Danya. So I really hope that makes sense. It's just one of those things. I find it much easier to paint it off completely and then use that density slider so that it's removed evenly off all of their skin. Sheridan. LUTs are also in CS6. Fantastic. Now, do you know what? I didn't actually know that. That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant for people who aren't on the cloud. You've got them in CS6. Thank you, Sheridan, for posting that comment there. Terry Donnelly, experimenting is good. It sure is, mate. It sure is. And the work that you do, well, you know it is good, because some of the work you're producing, mate, is absolutely outstanding. And if you didn't experiment, you'd never be getting the results you're getting. That's just, it's just plainly obvious. So nice one, mate. Thanks for joining in. All right, let's have a look then. Now, I'm going to go create a merged or stamped layer at the top of the layer stack. So let's just go Shift, Control, Alt and E. And that's going to create a merged or combined layer. So if I turn every other layer off, you'll see nothing changes. This one at the top now is a combination of everything below it. The reason I'm going to do that is because I want to do some light shaping. So I'm going to go, let's just double click on the layer to rename it. And we'll call Light Shaping. Whoops. Light Shaping, and I'm going to do that using Camera Raw. So now we go Filter and Camera Raw. This was one of those enhancements that came with the cloud, where they introduced Camera Raw as a filter, and I think when it first came out it didn't get the reaction that maybe Adobe were expecting. It was kind of like, oh right, well, that's pretty cool. But it really is, I think, one of the best additions that we've had in Photoshop over the last, I don't know how many years, is the ability to use Camera Raw as a filter. Before then, we could only use Camera Raw right at the very, very start of our retouching, when we were doing our raw conversion. Now we can use it at any stage, and there's so many things available to us. I actually love using Camera Raw. It may just be that there's something like oranges. You want to reduce or play around with the oranges in your image. There's no other place, and in Camera Raw you're going to find orange. So that just may be the one reason you like it. But for me, I just like diving in and using all the vignetting and the gradients. We can actually come in here and start playing around with it. So I'm going to click on the radial filter just at the top here. Let's just reset these sliders. Come to the flyout menu in the top right hand side, reset local corrections, click on that. All the sliders now go back to their default. And I'm just going to bring the exposure down just a touch, like so. I'll now click in the middle of our image, drag up and drag across to add a bit of a vignette in there. So drag that around, like so. Just bring the exposure down just a little bit, something like that. Now that seems to be coming a little bit too far over into Danya's face. So I can actually keep the vignette there, but actually remove it off her face by choosing Brush at the top of the screen and seeing the little minus symbol just here. I can now just remove that overflow of that vignette off Danya, and I'll also remove it off Dustin's face just there as well. So that's pretty cool. I might add a graduated filter now just from the top. Just bring the exposure down just from the top as well. So really start to shape this light. So really direct the viewer's eye. Something like that. Let's just add another graduated filter from the bottom. So drag that upwards like so. I'm just holding my Shift key so that it goes up in a nice straight line. If I didn't hold the Shift key, it'd be like all this all over the place. But the Shift key keeps it locked in like that. Let's bring the exposure down. That's pretty cool. And I might just do one extra little thing. I'm going to get the adjustment brush. Let's just bring the exposure now the other way and just bring it up to maybe 0.15, just a touch. And I'm going to paint over Dustin's face just to brighten his face just a touch. Something like that. So let's have a look. There we go. Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, we like that. Let's just click OK, come out, of Camera Raw. And we can see now that makes a big difference to me. So we can kind of go before, after, before, after. Really starts to direct the viewer's eyes now where we want them to be. Certainly you go straight, as you look at the picture now, your eyes are drawn straight, well mine certainly are, drawn straight onto Danya and onto Dustin. Now what other little thing do I want to do? I'm just going to do one extra little thing. So I was asked to show this, and this is that cartoony kind of painterly look. Let's just take a quick look over to the comments just for a second. The last tip on blend modes is top. Thank you very much. You're welcome, Pete. That's nice. But Jonathan, blooming brilliant, mate. Living tundra, so don't use my own work. Great, nice to have you on board, Jonathan. We need to speak. We need to catch up, mate. Right. All right. So let's just show you this one little thing. I'm now going to create a another merged layer at the top of the layer stack. Shift, Control, Alt, and E. And then I'm going to create a copy of that one by pressing Command or Control J. So 2 copies of that merged layer. The top one I'm going to rename to Sharpen, or actually no, we'll rename that one to Details, and the one below it I'm going to rename to The Look. Let's just turn off that uppermost layer. So I'm going to show you very quickly how I add that kind of painterly kind of look to my pictures. I do this, I'd probably say, to 90% of the images that I do to some degree or another. And I want to show you, because some people think it's a plugin, it's actually just built in within Photoshop. So I'll zoom in. Whoops, let's just go to there. Now here we go, this is how we do it. This is on the look layer. The top layer is turned off at the moment. Filter, noise, reduce noise. Now when the property dialog comes up, let's just bring the cursor outside of there and tick on Dustin's face so you can see what we're doing here. Now the settings, we've got strength, preserve details, reduce color noise, sharpen details. For this particular effect, take the strength all the way to 10, or around 8 to 10, something like that. But all the other sliders, take them all the way to 0, so drag them all over to the left. The only one we want to use is the strength slider. Now if I put my cursor inside the preview here and press down and release, press down and release, you can see the effect, hopefully, on this live stream that it's doing there. For me, it adds a real kind of realism to the skin. This is what really helps the picture start to come out of the page. It adds texture to the skin that I really like, and some people think that it does actually add kind of like a painterly feel to it. So I'm going to go leave the strength at 8 and click OK. So now I've actually got that really nice texture that I love on the skin. So you can just see it before and after just there. The only problem with doing this is now that all those areas that should be sharp, like his eyes and Danya's kind of jewellery just here, that's now no longer sharp because it's had that reduced noise filter put across it. So to bring the detail back so that we do have those edges as being sharpened is this. This is how we do it. Click on the uppermost layer, the layer that we call Details, and turn that on. Then we're going to go to Filter, Other, and High Pass. And in High Pass here, all we need to do is put a 1 pixel radius in the settings at the bottom. And again, you probably just about see it on the grey layer. You can just about see the details coming through. Now with a 1 pixel radius, the bits you're starting to see coming through the grey are the bits that are the areas with the most contrast and the most sharpness. And they're the bits that we need to kind of take that effect off just a little bit so they don't look completely smooth. So with the 1 pixel radius settings in there, we're going to click OK. And then to get rid of the grey, we're going to go from the blend mode normal to hard light. Bang, there we go. So now if I turn that details layer off and on, off and on, you can see how it does maintain that kind of texture on the skin, but the detail areas, the areas where we've got the eyes, the jewellery, a little bit of the hair, it starts to have that little bit of sharpness back, so we get a great mix of both of those kind of effects that we want. Now one other little step that I do once I've applied that kind of effect there is to create one more combined layer at the top of the layer stack. So Shift, Control, Alt and E, and I'm going to call this Contrast. Like so. I'm just going to quickly dive over to the comments. Someone coming in. Boom, boom, boom. Glenn, when you're doing the darkening in Camera Raw, I created the merge layer and Command J, then do it on the top layer and reduce the opacity if needed. Is that an option? I'll have a think about that. I'll come back to you in a minute, Russ. Alright, last thing then. So, got our contrast layer. Now I love using unsharp mask for contrast. So here we go. We're going to go Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. Now when this property comes up here, 3 sliders. We've got Amount, radius and threshold. Put the threshold at 0. The amount and the radius keep around about the same, and generally I'm around about the 15, 16 kind of mark, something like that. So you can see my amount is 15, my radius is 15, and if I turn that off and on, you may not see that on your screen, but give it a go. Definitely give Unsharp Mask a go. There's loads of ways that you can actually add contrast within Photoshop, but what I really love about using Unsharp Mask is that it allows us to add quite a significant amount of contrast without starting to get any artifacts bringing in or any banding and all that kind of stuff. So I really do like to use Unsharp Mask. So I'll now click OK. I only want that contrast to be on their face, because I really want the faces to feel as if they're coming forward from the screen and the viewer to look at those. And the viewers generally, when you're looking at a picture, you're generally drawn to the areas that are the brightest, the sharpest, and got the most contrast. So we've done pretty much that all on the face at the minute. Let's now add a black layer mask to hide that contrast off all of the picture. Get a brush and paint in white at 100% opacity, and just paint that Unsharp Mask contrast only onto Dustin and Danya's face. Something like that. Okay, so let's just double click on the hand tool, take us back to full view, and now if I come all the way down to the bottom of the layers panel and turn every layer off apart from the background layer, you can see how just very quickly, bear in mind I've been talking, if you're actually doing this once you know the steps, you'll probably find you could do this in about 10 minutes. We can go from there to there, so from there to there. In fact, the before picture is pretty much not out of camera because there's just a couple of little things that we did within Lightroom. So yeah, pretty much that's it. That's the kind of steps that I wanted to show you. I am going to do that video on the lookup tables, the new way that I'm using them now, because although I absolutely love them, what you don't want to be doing is having to create that recipe every single time that you're making your, doing your pictures. So what I'm going to quickly show you in that video is to show you how, when you're using them within your retouching, you can save them as one click. And like I said before, the way that I've got a video on my YouTube channel at the minute is a bit long-winded showing you how to do it. I've now got a brand new way of doing it. So make sure that you check out that video, which I should be recording tonight, and that'll be up online for tomorrow. So let's have a quick dive over now to some of the questions that have come through. So I'm going to scare you by bringing me back onto the screen. There we go. Hello. Right, let's have a quick look. Dive over to here, some of the questions. Have a quick look. Excuse my head just for a minute. Let's have a look. Amanda Glassburn, Russell Clark. Russell, I'll have a think about that one. So when you're doing the darkening in Camera Raw, now when you're saying that, do you mean when I did the actual vignetting in Camera Raw? Is that the kind of thing you're talking about? If it is, drop another line in there and just let me know. But what I really like about this kind of stuff is that there's a few comments on there giving maybe alternative techniques for particular things that I've done. That's what's great about Photoshop. Just think of this, Photoshop, think of it as being a tool bag. And in that tool bag, you've just got loads of different kind of techniques that you can kind of call on and that you like to use. Before I got, when I first left school, I was working with a plasterer around Wolverhampton and what have you. And I was mainly a labourer, but also got to learn how to do the plastering. Now, I got to the stage where I could do plastering, and I had my trowel, and I kind of like, you've got the plaster, and I'd start at the bottom, go up the wall, down and up. So there's always 3 strokes that you had to do. So you go up, down, up. That's how I use my trowel. Now I saw other guys who were working there, they had all their mix on their trowel there, and they'd go from the top down to the bottom. So they'd go bottom, top, bottom. So what I'm kind of saying here is, thinking on top of my head here, is that same tool but using it in a different way but getting the same result. As long as you get the final result you're after, who cares how you get there? So long as you get a great result and you get what you're after, then just enjoy it. It's always good to learn other techniques because you might find that a new way that you find you prefer. So always be out there looking for stuff, but don't worry about doing things wrong. As long as you get the result you want, be happy. All right. So let's have a dive over to here. Would you not darken the t-shirt as the shoulder on my screen takes my eye and becomes the focal point? Actually, and who's put that one there? Inner Light UK. Yes, definitely. That's a step I missed out there, mate. So if I just take you over to Lightroom and I'll show you the final image, you can see here that I have actually taken that down. Now, that actually, that white shirt there was quite bright. Although we metered it, it was quite bright. And a way that I did that, let's just show you how I did that. Again, lots of ways you could do it. You could just come over to the filter menu, choose camera raw, because again, another reason why camera raw is so damn good. And you could use maybe the adjustment brush. Let's just reset all the sliders here. Here we go, reset local correction settings, bring down the highlights. I'm going to use the mask now so I can see where I'm painting, just that little tick at the bottom there. And you could come in over here, so this is where I'm painting, so I can kind of see that's the area we need to bring down just a little bit. Turn off that mask, and you can see now how we can actually bring down the brightness in that top of that t-shirt just there. So yeah, you're dead right, your eyes are drawn to that, but I did do it in the final picture. It's just one step I forgot, so thanks for reminding me. Let's just click OK, and we come out to there. So let's have a quick look. Let's just dive over here. Brilliant tutorial, Justin. Right. David, you're more than welcome. Barry King, good to see you, mate. Nice to see you there. But I think that's pretty much it. If you like this kind of stuff, if the live stream you think works, rather than just posting up videos that have been pre-recorded, then let me know, because this is the kind of stuff I'd like to do. You know, the technology's there. It'd be great to make use of it. If you think they're useful, then please just make sure that you leave a comment, and you know, if there's a few of them there, then I'll know that I need to do another one. They wouldn't always be this long anyway. Sometimes I'm actually thinking of doing, you know, short 10-minute tutorials, little techniques that we can dive in and do them live, because if you tune in live, you can then ask me questions, because sometimes it can be hard to get to the questions once I've done the video. So if we're doing it live, I'll be more inclined to answer them, if that makes sense. But pretty much it. And don't forget, the new book's there, nice and heavy by Rocking Up. Really happy with that. Sold out at Photoshop World, which I was really chuffed about. But it's officially been released. Definitely been released in the US, available now, and it's available in the UK, but it says it'll take a month to get to you. It may be sooner, who knows? But if you've got it in Kindle or paperback, please, if you like it, leave us a comment on Amazon. I'd really, really appreciate it. But guys, we've had great numbers for the first one, considering I only advertised it a short while ago. But thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know what you think of this. Let me know little things I need to know. Make sure everything's okay, like the sound. How was the sound? What was the lighting like? What was the screen kind of quality like? Because there's all kind of settings I need to play with to make sure I'm getting it right for you. But again, thank you very much. Adios. I'll see you around. I think I'll turn it off this way. Let's have a look. I'll turn this off. There we go.